So I am Amalia Pizarro from the International Energy Agency. And before we start this roundtable on how to kickstart production demand, how to make sure they match what the bridging role the storage infrastructure could play, I want to share with you some insights of our recent global hydrogen review that will provide us a bit of a global picture. And then my wonderful speakers will also have the chance to present a few other insights. So the Global Hydrogen Review is available on our website and a full, huge projects database with more than 2,000 projects on low emission hydrogen worldwide. Just to start, where are we today? So actually today, the world is already consuming 97 million tons of hydrogen. This consumption is increasing compared to last year, and what we expect is that we might end up 2024 with almost 100 million tons of hydrogen produced and consumed worldwide. Nevertheless, as you all know, hydrogen is still part of the problem and not of the solution regarding climate change. Only 1% of this hydrogen is produced with technologies that we can call low emissions hydrogen, 0.1% with electrolysis today. The rest could be with fossil fuels with CO2 capture. Nevertheless, in the IEA's World Energy Outlook, we illustrate different scenarios, and the most ambitious scenario where the carbonization is achieved deeper and faster is our net zero emissions scenario by 2050. So in this ambitious scenario, already by 2030, we will see that the demand for hydrogen will increase around 50%. It could reach around 150 million tons. The users of this hydrogen change. Of course, we still continue to have use of hydrogen in refinery, in the industrial sectors as a feedstock for ammonia, for methanol, but we also see new uses of hydrogen already within this decade, particularly for synfuels production, for aviation and shipping, a bit on heavy industry, long-term distance transport, and just a tiny bit also for power. But the most important thing is not only that this hydrogen demand increase, but that the production pattern shifts radically. And already within this decade, in this scenario, we will have almost 50% of the hydrogen production coming from low emission source. And I always use the term low emission source because this is more like a neutral, technological neutral term, and it includes hydrogen from electrolysis and hydrogen with fossil fuels, but with high capture rates of CO2. We are talking about around 93% of CO2 capture rates. And in the Global Hydrogen Review, we tried to keep track, like, are we heading towards this direction? Last year, when we published it, there were 1.7 million tons of low emissions hydrogen projects with a final investment decision. This year, this number has doubled. We actually have 3.4 million tons of low emissions hydrogen projects with a final investment decisions that are planning to be built before 2030. But we are still consuming almost 100 million tons of hydrogen. This number is, however, relatively small because this is only 7% of all the announced projects. The full project pipeline of low emissions hydrogen is almost 50 million tons, but only 7% of these projects have a final investment decision. This means there is a huge uncertainty about how many of these projects will materialize and how much hydrogen will be produced from low emission source by 2030. And the outlook looks a bit different if we consider the technological pathways. Considering the full project pipeline, almost 75% of these projects are electrolytic hydrogen projects. That's 37 million tons of hydrogen. But when we look at those projects that have taken a final investment decision, actually hydrogen production with fossil fuels with CCS is in a much more mature phase. So in proportion, we compare both. They play a larger role in those projects that have taken a final investment decision. Reasons are projects are larger and the technology is a bit more mature. We have concentration of the projects that have taken a final investment decision are in China. The two largest projects, Saudi Arabia and India. Europe has a lot of announcements, but a lot of these announcements are still at a feasibility stage or a conceptual stage. Europe is moving slower regarding final investment decision. Projects are also smaller. CCS, North America is leading the way. And just to compare production and demand, there is a mismatch number. So we have 49 million tons of low emission hydrogen that could be produced by 2030. Considering implemented policies, by 2030, we have a demand of 6 million tons. So there is an obvious mismatch. Trying to be a bit more optimistic, considering also the targets that have not been translated yet into policies, we have 11 million tons. When we published the Global Hydrogen Review last year, this number was 14 million tons, but we had to revise the numbers down because actually the ambition of the targets has decreased in the industry, in power, in transport. So now it's 11 million tons. And just to illustrate before I pass to my presenters this gap, so we have 4.1 million tons that we could have by 2030, considering operational projects and projects with the final investment decisions. We still have the possibility to make more projects moving towards the final investment decisions, because if we consider targets and policies in place, we could have a demand for around 11 million tons of low emissions hydrogen. And just, no, did I? And but just to emphasize, the government's goals to produce low emissions hydrogen is 43 million tons of hydrogen, while their goal to consume it is 6 million tons. So there is a mismatch, and there is a huge mismatch between the demand and the production projects. So now I would like to discuss about this mismatch and to see how we can move projects towards final investment decisions, but how we can also find off-takers for these low emissions hydrogens, and how can regulation help us during all this challenging journey. So, Antoine?
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Antoine Decou. I'm working for Life. I'm responsible for business development in southeast of France. Life is a hydrogen producer, renewable hydrogen producer, based created in France. And I'll explain to you a little bit our history and where we are now. And then we will address the issues we are talking about today. So a short history, because we are a young company. We're still a young company. We've been created in 2017 in Nantes, in northwest of France, and by Mathieu Guénet, who is an old, former CEA, so Commissariat à l'énergie atomique and Énergie Alternative in France. The company was officially launched in 2019. Our first production site has been built and is in operation until 2021, since 2021. And it's in Boin, in Vendée. I'll show you after a map with our production sites. We've been introduced in Euronext market in 2022. And it helped us to go on with our next projects, among which we have built the first hydrogen production unit at sea in 2022, and 3 other production sites who are now in construction in France and Germany. And are in operation. I'll show it to you. So we only work with electrolyzers. We built electrolyzers to suppliers, and we integrate them in plants, hydrogen production plants, such as the one you have here, which is the one we built in Boin in 2021. It's a 1 megawatt production unit. It's based on a semi-centralized production concept. From this kind of plants, we deliver the hydrogen, gaseous hydrogen, in a smaller storage like this. There are containers of different types and different sizes. You saw one of them on the picture this morning, because we supplied the hydrogen that has been used by Storengy for the HyPSTER project. So we have different models, and we deliver the hydrogen in an area of about 100 to 200 kilometers around each production site. That's the first kind of project we have. The other one is for bigger consumers, such as big industrial companies. It has been said that, for example, in chemical or in other kind of industrial applications, you need a larger, huge amount of hydrogen. And in this kind of situation, we built an electrolyzer just in the site of the customer to be able to supply the hydrogen directly with a pipeline, a small pipeline from our production site to the process of the industrial. And then the last kind of project we have is, as I mentioned, is offshore production, because we are convinced that to be able to produce the large quantities we will need in the future of renewable hydrogen in a competitive way, we will have to go to the sea to benefit from the competitiveness of the renewable electricity produced by offshore wind. So that's why we are working on this. I don't have the map. Okay, I thought I had it. There's a problem with the presentation. So we have actually... Oui, il manque la slide avec la carte de nos sites, mais c'est pas grave. Oui, I'll explain it without the map. So I mentioned the first production site we have in Boin. It's a 1 megawatt. We have two others in France that are in operation now, in Brittany and in Occitanie region. There are 5 megawatt production units, so 2 tons per day each of hydrogen. And we are building 2 other sites in Germany for 10 and 20 megawatts each. And in France, we have 2 other sites, one in Somme, so it's a Haute-France region in the north of France for 5 megawatts too. And one in close to Grenoble in Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region for 10 megawatts too. So we are progressing on our learning curve, and maybe we'll talk about that later. But for us, it's one of the issue we have to make those bigger projects a reality. We have to work on smaller ones before, and to go bigger and bigger, learning and de-risking this kind of projects technically and economically, financially too, because it will be a huge investment to take to concretize this kind of big projects.
Oh, I think we are turning online with our next speaker, Thomas.
Yes, hello everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, Thomas.
Perfect. Great. So this is the moment my screen has chosen to just turn off. So I will just, take my laptop in front of me. But hopefully I could manage. So hi everyone. Happy to be with you from unfortunately from the computer. I wish I was there with you today, but couldn't make it. So I make the most of the presentation. I will present you my company, Domo Chemical. So we are an industrial player of the of chemistry. Let me share my presentation first. Okay, so you should be able to see the screen. And now,
Thomas, maybe can you give us 1 minute because we can hear you, but we cannot see you, and we would like to see you.
Ah, of course.
I can see you in the computer.
Okay.
But I want to share this with the others.
Perfect. No problem.
1 second. Technical problems. And now you are live. Your presentation is live.
Perfect. And you can see me somewhere.
We can't see you, unfortunately, but we can see your slides.
Okay, great. So that's all right. That's the best part. So yes. So about my company. So we are a chemistry company. We are producing nylon polyamide. That's the same term. We are a rather small company within the chemical sector. We are a bit more than 2,000 employees. We have 10 industrial sites across the world, mainly in Europe. You will see in the map just after, which is here. So yes, you can see that that Domo is mainly a European player with industrial sites in France, in Spain, in Italy, in Germany, mainly, but also present outside of Europe, in America, in Asia, where we also wish to expand further than it's the case today. We are a company created in at the beginning of the 90s with the purchase of the site of the polyamide value chain in the former East Germany, in Leuna. So it's on the map here. And after the company expanded, and the most recent date is 4 years ago in 2020, when Domo acquired the European activity of Solvay polyamide, where I was working at that time. In terms of sustainability, because of course this hydrogen topic is mainly related to our sustainability agenda, I just wanted to share a few things. So first, the 3 pillars that we have. The first one is related to the industrial emissions, so it's very linked again to our topic today. We wish to lower by 40% our scope 1 and 2 CO2 emissions between 2019 and 2030. And the other objective, specific objective that we have, which is again very interesting in the topic that we discussed today, is renewable electricity, where we want to be at 50% in 2030 and totally turn in renewable electricity in 2040. Today, it is fair to say that electricity is not the main driver of a chemical company such as we are, but given the decarbonization projects and specifically the hydrogen one that we have, it will be very, very important in the coming years. Very quickly, before jumping into our hydrogen project, the 2 other pillars are so what we call partner of choice, linked to our customers, of course, but also suppliers, to come up with sustainable solutions. So here we are looking at topics such as the carbon footprint of the products, so including also the scope 3. And of course, the third one being the more on the corporate responsibility side, with safety being, of course, of utmost importance, and the engagement of all our employees to make all of these objectives happen. So if we take the decarbonization topic on a wide perspective for a company like us in the chemical sector, the first thing to say is that the first building block of this is efficiency. Before looking at energy transition, we, of course, I mean, it's our daily job on the shop floor is to increase the efficiency. So we have many projects. Some of them can be little, but it's actually adding these projects to one another that will help us achieve our objective. So many examples: heat integration, reducing consumption, taking the closing the loops of the water intakes, for instance. There's many things, and that's really the daily job of the operators on the site. Then very quickly also, in the chemistry we are using a lot of steam, so we are looking at different options to decarbonize the steam. We have one site in Germany, the one I was talking about before, who is using for starting this year a first electric boiler. So again, the topic of green electricity will be important for that regard. And also the first RDF driven boiler that we have in our JV site in Alsace in France. Also linked to electricity, we are looking at taking more shares into PPAs. So far, it's not the case yet, but we have a project which is really close to the end in Germany as well. So far, renewable electricity at Domo, it's around 18% at the end of last year. It's 100% obtained by green certificates, but which is let's say a nice, good way to start. But to us, we need to go beyond that, and we will be able to talk about this during the questions and so on. We need also to secure more long-term, like physical projects such as PPAs, and such as this solar field in Germany. And of course, the fourth block of this presentation is the projects I will be talking today, is the hydrogen project. So in one of our two value chains, two types of polyamide. The one which is produced in France, in our site in Saint-Fond, near Lyon, is requiring a lot of hydrogen as a raw material. So today it's coming from a traditional SMR process. And tomorrow, this will be produced by an electrolyzer on the site. We already have the space on site, thanks to the partnership we have with Inelix. So this is very briefly on this slide, but just to show you the value chain of this polyamide 6,6, where we need this hydrogen. So you can see the chain, the raw materials here coming from outside of the company. This is the scope of what we do, and HU is there to turn this molecule of ADN, adiponitrile, to HMD, hexamethylendamine. We need this H2. So this is where it's really critical. And in terms of geography, here is the site. So welcome to our site of Belle Étoile in Lyon. Here you have the part of the site which is producing this famous molecule HMD, which needs the H2, and the project, the future electrolyzer will be placed here in this area of the site. This is a very big industrial site. It's very old. It's been created 70 years ago. 52 hectares on the ground. It's a Seveso site for the French audience. It's continuous production. So it's a very major site for the company. And so the project, here it is. The plan is to have a 85 megawatt in terms of capacity, which is important to mention, electrolyzer on the site. The capacity is around 11,000 tons of hydrogen per year, which is already quite significant. And this covers 100% of the amount that we need to produce the HMD. So it will be 100% for our needs, and there will be room for other projects.
Thomas, sorry to introduce you, to cut you, but we are a bit short on time. We'll have the chance to talk about your project during the Q&A. I just want to give the floor to Ilaria.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the introduction. So I will just start right away as soon as my slides appear. I'm going to talk about the role of regulation in this context. And as everybody knows, the role of regulation is usually very important for any market development, in the sense that it can actually support market development. On the other hand, when regulation is too strict or wrong, then clearly it represents an obstacle to market development. And for the hydrogen market, the role of regulators has been even harder than usual, because regulators normally regulate markets that already exist and they just try to fix things that do not work. Whereas here, when we talk about the hydrogen market, you heard the numbers, the positive numbers from Amalia earlier on, but we can say that we are still in the infancy phase of market due to the limited demand and supply. So after all, so this was the famous dilemma of regulating the hydrogen market. And I think we're all tired of seeing these chicken and egg slides everywhere in all presentations. So the good news is that during last summer, the first hydrogen and decarbonized gas markets package was published. So the regulation at European level is now a fact. It's now a reality. So we are leaving finally this dilemma. But nevertheless, we are focusing for this reason, because the package is really a set of measures at European level. We will mainly focus today on the European regulation. It's too early to start talking about regulation being implemented at national level, although this will happen very soon. Oops. Okay, yes, I wanted to, there is a picture missing, but okay, it doesn't matter. Just one word on the Florence School of Regulation. We are hosted by the European University Institute. We are an independent center of research. We mainly look into these three sectors that you see here: energy and climate, transport, water and waste. Although we have also some new initiatives from time to time. We like to experiment and try new sectors. For example, now we're going to have a small branch looking into agriculture, in the spirit of energy system integration and circular economy. We mainly organize training courses, we produce applied research, and we are engaged in policy dialogues. Particularly, we have a direct connection with the European institutions, because the European University Institute, which hosts us, is the only university at European level. So we don't have strict national links. We are hosted in Italy, in Florence, but we really have a European spirit. So looking into the content for today, what we can say is that the targets for hydrogen have increased, not so gradually over the year, actually in a quite fast manner. The first European hydrogen strategy was published in 2020, and the target there was 5.6 million tons of hydrogen produced. This was only a communication, so it had no binding obligation. But we've seen this target for hydrogen growing over the years for Europe. And in 2022, the Repower EU set these ambitious targets, as we all know, for 10 million tons of internal production of renewable hydrogen and 10 million tons of hydrogen to be imported. Again, not a binding target, but just to provide the vision for the future. And we can say that lately, with the Net Zero Industry Act and the Green Deal Industrial Plan, we see that in addition to the targets for hydrogen, it seems that hydrogen will be really part of the picture for the future energy mix and system in Europe. So the question is how to get there. And the first thing is clearly scaling up production. And we know that there are a number of initiatives in place in Europe. The most famous one is the European Hydrogen Bank, with the second auction just concluded. That is precisely an instrument that Europe put in place to facilitate the startup of the hydrogen market. But there are also other financing programs we've seen also this morning with the Clean Hydrogen Partnership, etc. The other big part is boosting demand, not to be underestimated, but the Commission has put in place several targets, sub-targets for renewable hydrogen consumption, particularly in industry and transport. And you see here mainly regarding the aviation and maritime sector. Also, other initiatives are, for example, the fact that the all hydrogen production facilities producing more than 25 tons of hydrogen a day will be included under the emissions trading scheme. So this means that electrolyzers will then concur to have free allowances. And there are some specific provisions for the under the Energy Taxation Directive to facilitate consumers of renewable and low carbon hydrogen, and also an initiative, the European Clean Hydrogen Alliance. We also participated quite actively at Florence School in this initiative a couple of years ago, which led to the listing of a number of projects which could, with this famous project pipeline with proposals for new projects in Europe. And very importantly, develop hydrogen infrastructure. That's what we are talking about also today. There are already some facilitations. The hydrogen projects can benefit from these provisions under the Trans-European Energy Networks and Trans-European Transport Network policies, and also the PCI, the projects of common interest, which are facilitating development of hydrogen infrastructures, particularly electrolyzers. And then the big elephant in the room for regulation, the package that I mentioned. So, yes, and I forgot, certification is also, I believe, the next step, because if we want to speed up regulation, we want to really see a market development, particularly for a market which is already planning to be a global market with imports of renewable hydrogen from non-European countries. Certification, standardization will certainly be the very next challenge. So I don't want to give you a lecture on the package. I don't think anybody wants it, but just to quickly summarize the main novelties regarding hydrogen. We know that with this new regulation in place, the hydrogen has been finally integrated properly in regulation. And so hydrogen and so low carbon gases and renewable gases are now entitled to fully take part and flow into the European energy system. And there are some facilitations to help this market start. Blending is possible at interconnection points up to 2%. Very importantly, and maybe as a first step, finally we have an almost complete definition of renewable and low carbon gases, which partly is included in this package. Tariff discounts, all the provisions to facilitate access to the infrastructure in Europe to these renewable and low carbon gases, and a new European entity for hydrogen network, the so-called ENNO, which is it's the representative body for TSOs managing the hydrogen infrastructure. And last but not least, something that the Commission is looking quite frequently into these days is this pilot voluntary mechanism for the support to market development for hydrogen. In a nutshell, is the evolution of the joint purchasing mechanism, which has been set for during the crisis as to facilitate joint purchasing of natural gas. The idea is to see to what extent this platform, this mechanism can be used also for hydrogen in the future.
So thanks, Ilaria. I think we will have the chance to discuss a bit more, and I will ask you to provide short answers, please. I have not been the best timekeeper. I want to start with Antoine about production. You mentioned you have a few projects at the 5 megawatt scale already operational, I think already under construction, a few other ones around 10, 20 megawatts. Yeah. We have seen there are very few projects already operational, very few projects without FID. What makes your projects unique? What made you move to taking this final investment decision?
Thank you for the question. As I mentioned before, we are on a learning curve. So we began with 1 megawatt, then we went to 5. Now we are working with 5 megawatt units. We are building 10 and 20 megawatts ones. And we are working on the next step, which is bigger projects, such as the one we have in Le Havre for Yara, or the other one in Saint-Nazaire to build to produce e-methanol with our partner Elise Energy. We are talking about 100 megawatts for the first one and 210 megawatts for the second one. So these are big projects which are very important in terms of decarbonization, because for example, for Yara, for ammonia production, it's a huge. It will have a huge impact on the carbon intensity of this very emissive sector, and for e-methanol and all the usage it can have, for example, in the maritime transport, it will be very important too. But to be able to reach those targets at the end of the decade, we are convinced that we have to work on those smaller projects to begin to learn how to design, to construct, to operate this kind of objects, because it's not trivial. It's not, and we cannot have technical issues we face now on those big projects, because we know that the objective for the industrial customers is that we are at the level of continuity of service and the fiability that they need to keep their competitiveness and their way to work and to address their market in the future by decarbonizing.
But I have a question. So you mentioned at the very beginning this of the risking technology.
Yeah.
We have heard before that there were also some projects with the electrolyzers. So even if we say that the electrolyzers technology have a high TRL, it seems there are still some technical problems. Is it the only reason why you are not yet taking final investment decisions, or are there other reasons? Like,
actually, we took final investment
okay, for
decision
these 100.
No, for the first ones.
Okay, for the first one that are smaller. Yes.
Yeah.
But for the largest ones, what will you need?
It is planned, but in fact, we need several things. We need visibility on the incentive policies at all levels, both national and European. Because there is now a framework at the European level, but unfortunately, it's not well transposed in France, for example. We need customers, so we need help for support schemes for our customers, both in mobility sector, because they are our first customers for our small sites that I was talking about. And for example, in France, we are waiting for a decree about the tier-worth mechanism, which is it's a little bit technical, but it's supposed to help the fuel distributors to implement hydrogen in their offers. And it's not. We are waiting for this since a month, and we need a visibility on the price of electricity too. And that's.
I think Ilaria also wants to say something about this.
I was just to comment on your point. Indeed, implementation is the next step. So the package was published in July, and regulations are usually immediately implementable, but immediately in European language means a few months minimum. So, and then there is the directives, and the directives needs to be transposed. So it will come. So I'm sure, but you're absolutely right. And I'm sure I agree with you. We will see, the results of implementation next, because the devil is always in the details.
And unfortunately, in parallel in France, we are waiting for an update of the French strategy for the development of hydrogen. And with the context we all know with the politics in France, it's going to be.
So
it's going to take time.
There are multiple challenges that makes that that the industry in general is still moving slightly slower. But maybe I wanted to mention to ask something to Thomas. I don't recall how big was your project. If you could tell us, I want to know how big the project is, what's your status? How close are you to a final investment decision? And maybe for the audience to know, who is going to use this polyamide 66 produced with low emissions hydrogen?
Thanks, Amalia, for the question. So I was indeed going to go there with my final slide of the presentation. So the project with the dynamics of this electrolyzer on site is very close to the FID, but not yet there. What we are waiting for the project is the final notification from the European Commission on the subsidies of the project, which is taking time and is already late for now more than 1 year. So we are hanging to this final decision. We are not concerned as the project has been already pre-notified when we applied for the EPCIE. But so yeah, so waiting for that. And in terms of take, so these 85 megawatts of capacity will produce more or less 11,000 tons of hydrogen, which we will mainly use for the production of this polyamide 66. And then we also have some room for other off-takers to also connect to the project and make this electrolyzer live for the future years. We really see it as an ecosystem project. Where of course we will be the main off-taker by far, but I mean we will be able to connect all the actors of to this new facility. Of course, we were talking about mobility earlier in the meeting. There will be also a way to connect this electrolyzer to a potential mobility station, because we are just next to the highway, the biggest highway going south of Europe, and we will also. I mean, Lyon is located right on the Hyphen, distribution grid, which also makes it a very good place. And in terms of outlet markets, and I'll finish with that. Polyamide 66 is an engineered materials that usually goes to very technical applications within. I mean, for us, automotive being the first market. A bit more than half of production goes to automotive at Domo. Electric and electronics is also a very good market, and construction as well. So these are the three markets.
I have a question. One of your first slides was about all your sustainability targets.
Yeah.
They all look great, but I wonder, low emissions hydrogen production today is more expensive. So this will come at a price. Are your customers willing to pay for a more expensive product? And if they are willing to do so, why? So that's why I asked you, who is going to buy this polyamide? Because we know that some customers might be more willing to pay, or this might have a smaller impact on their total cost. So if you could maybe share some insights about this.
Yeah, very good question. And that's really one of the key things that we were asking ourselves when we, prepared the business plan of the project and so on. So it depends on the market, that's for sure. What we saw on our three big markets that we serve, as mentioned, the more ready one and the more mature in terms of being ready to pay a premium is the electronics markets. Because they have you take the example of companies which are our clients, Schneider Electric, Legrand, all these companies have a really clear sustainability agenda, and they are actually onboarding their suppliers in this direction. So they are quite interested in what we do to reduce the carbon footprint of the material, and they are willing to pay more. It's a bit different for the automotive industry, which is by far our biggest market. So here we have, I would say, more difficulties to place premium. And so it's funny because I joined the company a bit more than 2 years ago, and I remember the first discussion I had with our clients back in 2022. That was, again, it's only 2 years ago, and really the discussions on premium were very difficult. They were, basically not ready to pay anything more for this kind of sustainable material. And this has changed. In only 2 years, I can clearly see that this has changed. Of course, regulation also for the automotive sector is pushing them towards less CO2 product and so on. But there's also a kind of a spirit that has changed, and some companies, and also here you can see differences between some of the actors, are willing to pay. So it's going into the right direction. Of course, we will need to continuously work on that, because so far it's not making the. I mean, we know that we will need to go beyond what we see, but goes into the.
Thanks, Thomas. And I think, Antoine, I wonder if you have the same challenge. Do you suffer trying to find off-takers that are willing to pay more? And then maybe after, sorry, we are short on time. After Antoine, I would like Ilaria to provide us some insights about how can regulation help us to boost demand.
No, it's not always easy to answer clearly to your question, but we feel that there is a wish to go through this kind of decarbonization solutions, but we need I repeat always the same, but we need the support schemes to so that the hydrogen production reach the target in the future, in a very close future, I hope. But for that, the target of price, of course, because it's it's one of the main issues. But for that, we need to be supported to go on our learning curve that I was talking about just before. And it will help. And we need to customers that follow us in this way to the competitiveness, and yeah, it's gonna work, I hope.
What can we do in terms of regulation, because they mention it a lot?
Yes, so I mean, there's no wheel to be reinvented here. Regulations are always the same tools, the same instruments. It's sometimes they are restrictive, sometimes they are going in the direction of incentives. So it's a matter of balancing, you know, these two different strategies. So for as in my presentation for demand, for example, you've seen that there are these targets. I mean, you see the confirmation we just had that by putting targets, obligatory targets, clearly the industry moves, right? So they know that they have to meet these targets, and therefore there is a shift towards cleaner fuels. I'm thinking about maritime, I'm thinking about aviation. Clearly there is a direct consequence of regulation being put in place. Is it the only way? No. Is it the best way? Probably not. So I think the discussion taking place also in Florence is like, how can we be more creative? How can we make sure that we do not make big mistakes? Because that's the biggest risk. Because when regulation makes mistakes, everybody pays. Us at the end of the day, all of us. So this is something important we always keep in mind. But in terms of creativity, you've seen the hydrogen bank was a total novelty. So that is one, but I'm sure that in the next months there could be more ideas.
So if you think we were missing something, where do you think we are lagging behind?
I think we are lacking an overall plan, which is something very bad to say. Well, because I think the idea is there, the vision is there, but when it comes to declining into concrete objectives, the vision, there we could do better. I'm thinking at European level, I'm thinking at national level, there hasn't been a big push towards like coming up with a plan. We can do this, plan this infrastructure here, and maybe remove this other infrastructure there because it would not be useful anymore. So I think this is something very important that is missing. It's not easy. It's probably the most difficult thing to be achieved in this energy transition, to have the courage to abandon the old structure and to look towards the future, knowing that the future is very uncertain for all the reasons we said already today.
And now, because we have to conclude, I just want to make a similar question to Anton and Thomas. So what key action will you recommend to policymakers or the industrial sector or investors to unlock the potential from low emissions hydrogen? Maybe Thomas, if we start by you and we finish with Antoine. but short.
Yeah. So, I mean, echoing what has just been said, and Elia, you said it very right. We need a vision. Antoine, you mentioned this hydrogen
strategy
that we are, of course, indeed waiting for a few months now. And we need it faster. We see that as soon as the decision is taken, it unlocks the potential very, very fast, but the decisions are not fast enough. So I would say, yeah, keeping on building a vision and going as fast as we can.
Exactly, strategy and continuity in the support for the solutions, both for customers and producers.
So thanks. I think from a strategy, we need to move towards implementation. So that will be my last remarks. But so thank you very much for sharing your insights, and thank you to all of you for listening to us.